Welcome to the End of the Road podcast. Each week, we select one of our stories about the Great Lakes region and the tip of Michigan's thumb. These are taken from our website at thumbwind.com and presented here so that you can listen to it anytime, anywhere. So sit back, relax, and enjoy this week's story from the end of the road. This week's story is about two Native American Indian trails that cross the length of Michigan. The St. Joseph and Saginaw trails both serve today as the basis for our major roads and highways. The mystery of Michigan's St. Joseph Trail. The St. Joseph Trail was an ancient major Native American route that traversed the southern portion of Michigan, originating near the mouth of the St. Joseph River. It continued eastward, terminating near Ann Arbor and connecting with the other major trail systems along the Straits of Detroit. The St. Joseph Indian Trail roughly paralleled the famous Great Sauk Trail, which traversed Michigan along a route further south. The trail and the name morphed with the times, as the path was also called Old Joe Trail and Route du Sieur de la Salle. After Michigan became a state, the trail was improved and denoted as Territorial Road, one of Michigan's first public highways. The route opened the second tier of southern counties and helped to foster settlement in southwestern Michigan. Today, the ancient pathways and bits and pieces of Michigan Avenue, US 12, and vast swaths of I-94. Key aspects of Michigan's Indian trails. The ancient trails had some key characteristics that the early European settlers remarked about. They were narrow rutted paths, sometimes 12 to 18 inches wide, as the Native Americans walked single file to hide their numbers. The paths typically crossed on high ground and ridgelines to avoid the standing water of swamps and seasonal floodplains. When a trail crossed a river, it was common that stepping stones were placed to denote a shallow area and assist in its crossing. Finally, the paths converged in the major native settlement areas of Saginaw, Niles, Detroit, and Ann Arbor. Some parts of the trail were a denoted water trail. The St. Joseph terminated east of Ann Arbor, and travelers had the option of continuing on via canoe on the Huron River toward Detroit. Likewise, the Sand Ridge Trail on the western thumb has a crossing at Oak Point across Saginaw Bay via Charity Island to the mouth of the Au Sable, a prime fishing area. The legend of the St. Joseph Trail and the French explorer La Salle. In August 1679, La Salle finished the construction of the ship Le Griffin. This was the first European-designed ship to be constructed on the Great Lakes. While the exact measurement is unknown, the double-mast ship was believed to be up to 40 feet long, with a wide 15-foot beam. Carrying 7 cannons and a cargo capacity near 45 tons, this ship would have been viewed as a monster when it was launched on the upper Niagara River in early August. La Salle and his party's first mission of Le Griffin was to trade in the upper Great Lakes. The Griffin sailed up Lake Erie through the Straits of Detroit. On August 9 in Detroit, he met up with his lieutenant, Henri de Tonty, who joined him for the voyage up Lake Huron. On August 27, they arrived at Fort Michilimackinac to deliver 1,300 livres worth of trade goods at the Southwestern Trading Post. La Salle and de Tonty separate and explore. At the end of August, Louisiana Salle and Tonty parted ways. Tonty was assigned to round up deserters who were encamped at the major trading post at Sault Ste. Marie. La Salle sailed to Green Bay, Wisconsin. Here the Le Griffin left for Niagara with a load of furs, and La Salle was going on down Lake Michigan to seek a water route to the Mississippi. He continued with his men in canoes down the western shore of the lake, rounding the southern end, to the mouth of the Miami River. Here a small stockade was built, which they called Fort Miami. Tonty left Sault Ste. Marie in early October and rendezvoused with La Salle after almost 38 days of canoe travel down Lake Michigan, likely along the eastern shore. As spring approached in southwestern Michigan, on March 1, La Salle left Tonty in charge of the new post and headed east overland on the St. Joseph Trail in search of news of his ill-fated Griffin, presumably near Detroit. Little did La Salle know, but the Griffin had sunk near Green Bay with all hands. The wreck of the Griffin has never been found. La Salle and 5 men took a month to walk across Michigan to Niagara. They were considered the first Europeans to traverse the interior of Michigan. The Indian Trail evolves as Michigan strives to become a state. For the next 150 years, the St. Joseph Trail continued as a single path through the dense forests and prairies of southern Michigan. In 1805, Michigan became a territory, and for the next 30 years, the territorial government's first priorities were to create a system of territorial roads to assist in settlement of the state. By 1831, a public act was passed that contained the following provision: to lay out and establish a territorial road, commencing at or near the inn of Timothy S. Sheldon, on the Chicago Road, in the township of Plymouth, and running thence through the village of Ann Arbor, west to the mouth of St. Joseph's River. The road would become a public highway. A few years later, in 1834, the U.S. government stepped in and declared Territorial Road to be a federal highway and set aside $20,000 for further improvements. The era of the Corduroy Road. When the Territorial Road was first built from Plymouth to St. Joseph, a portion of the road was corduroy, which means wood logs placed firmly together in a fashion resembling the ribs in corduroy fabric. This would be used to keep the roadbed intact during wet and winter weather. Even today, construction crews may encounter the embedded logs of a portion of a corduroy road. In our post about the St. Joseph Trail, we have an interesting video of a portion of unearthed corduroy road found during road construction in West Michigan. If you're interested in this topic, go to thumbwind.com to see the details. Traveling on the St. Joseph Trail today. If you travel across Michigan on I-94, you're cruising along much of the same path as the original St. Joseph Trail and Territorial Road. However, further west, the old trail diverges south and shares the route with US 12 and Michigan Avenue. This concludes this portion of today's tale. If you're interested in knowing more, here are the sources of the St. Joseph Trail. Peek through time. St. Joseph Trail played an important part in the settlement of Jackson, published on Live. Transportation in Michigan History, Indian Started Road from Footpath to Freeways by Philip P. Mason, published in 1987. Indians of Washtenaw County, Michigan, by W. B. Hinsdale, published in 1927. Dictionary of Canadian Biography, Volume 2, from the University of Toronto, by E. B. Osler, published online in 2003. We will return with our next story after this message. Our second tale takes us to another major Native American route, and in the early 1800s it showed settlers the way into the interior of Michigan. Of all the named Indian trails in Michigan, the Saginaw Trail is the oldest and certainly the most traveled in the trail system. Originating from the Straits of Detroit, this Sauk Trail heads northwest through Pontiac, Flint, and supposedly terminating in Saginaw. Saginaw was a major Native population and cultural center in Michigan, with over 109 Chippewa Indian villages recorded. Saginaw was at a crossroads of numerous rivers and at the base of Saginaw Bay. From here, natives could travel directly to the other major hunting and trading points in Michigan. Some researchers denote the Saginaw Trail as continuing to the Traverse Bay area, sharing the route of the Mackinac Trail. The major interior Indian Trail through Michigan. When the French explorers and fur traders arrived, they found the trail useful as a trade route into the interior of Michigan. Tribes utilized the trail to travel to eastern forts and outposts to receive treaty payments from the British. Likewise, the French fur traders established themselves at key trail points for trading. In 1818, the Michigan territorial government approved the construction of a turnpike that led from Saginaw to Pontiac. Approval was granted to extend the road from Pontiac to Detroit in 1822. This turnpike was hardly better than a swampy sea of mud. It was described by William McCormick, who traveled the route in 1831, the mud was so deep one span of horses could not draw the wagon through. The Michigan Territory did not have funds to continue improving the Saginaw Turnpike. In 1827, requests to the U.S. government for funds were approved, and the road completed in 1841. A Saginaw Trail historical monument, located in Royal Oak, Michigan, reads as follows: the Saginaw Trail running from Detroit to Saginaw through Pontiac and Flint was originally an Indian trail. In 1816, Michigan territorial government authorized the building of a road from Detroit to Saginaw along the trail. Part of the trail in Oakland County is now Woodward Avenue and Dixie Highway. Evidence of the original Saginaw Trail path through Royal Oak is still visible as a depression in the ground running northwesterly across the property adjacent to the John Elman Starr House. The historical monuments at significant locations along the Saginaw Trail today. Straits of Detroit. The term Detroit is named by the early French explorers denoted the entire length river system from Lake Huron to Lake Erie. In 1701, Cadillac established Fort Detroit on the high shore of the Detroit River. This area was also known as a terminating point for several trails that crisscrossed. Today the Statue of Spirit of Detroit and the Hart Plaza on the Detroit River marks the beginning of this famous route. Moses Wisner Estate in Pontiac, the Michigan Governor's Mansion. He was born June 3, 1813, in New York. He came to Michigan in 1837. In 1841 he was admitted to the bar and practiced law until the Civil War. This property was purchased by Moses Wisner in 1844. Moses Wisner was governor of Michigan and his home served as the Michigan Governor's Mansion from 1859 to 1861. By 1862, Colonel Wisner took command of the 22nd Michigan Infantry. In the same year, the regiment went to Kentucky where Wisner died on January 5, 1863. Angelina Haskell Wisner, the wife of Moses, made it her home until her death in 1905, and members of the Wisner family resided here until 1945 when it was purchased by the Oakland County Historical Foundation. Further on westward from Pontiac to Drayton Plains, in 1822 Jonathan Perry Harvey and Austin Durfee settled near where Loon Lake enters into the Clinton River and named it Drayton Plains. English miller Daniel Windiate built the first grist mill called Drayton Mill named for his childhood home in England. The dam and grist mill were constructed in 1837. The Drayton Plains Hotel opened on the Saginaw Trail, later named Dixie Highway, across from Sashabaw Road on February 2, 1839. This hotel was an early stagecoach stop along the Saginaw Trail. Daniel Snyder Lord was the manager and tavern keeper in 1845. The hotel looks to have been a focal point of the social and political life of Waterford. There are numerous listings of Democratic and Republican caucus meetings at the hotel. The lodge also hosted Friday night oyster dinners and dancing for $1. The hotel was located near the Drayton Plains Railway Depot and across from Loon Lake. The railroad helped gave rise to making Waterford a resort area with its many lakes easily accessible to summer vacationers from Detroit. The Grand Traverse of the Flint. The spot where the trail crossed the Flint River was known as the Grand Traverse or Great Crossing Place. This rendezvous spot is described as an open plain lying in the bend of the river. The area was named Muscatawing. In Chippewa, this means the plain burned over. Native American gardens were also known to be in this area and it was known as a camping ground. The city of Flint, Michigan grew up around this crossing. An amazing story about the Saginaw Trail. Aristocracy on the Saginaw Trail, Tocqueville in Michigan, is considered one of the best stories about traveling the Saginaw Trail in 1839. The story is about two aristocrats from France who want to explore America's wilderness in 1831. The descriptions and detail of their travels from Detroit to Saginaw is a fascinating glimpse of life as a settler and experience among the Chippewa. Tocqueville deemed the Saginaw area the last vestige of civilization. When the pair were in Pontiac looking for guidance and suggestions, they received the following advice. Do you have any idea what you're in for? Do you know that Saginaw is the last inhabited place between here and the Pacific Ocean? That between here and Saginaw there's nothing but wilderness and trackless waste? Have you given any thought to forests rife with Indians and mosquitoes? Do you realize that you'll have to spend at least one night sleeping on the damp ground? Have you thought about the fever? Can you find your way in the wilderness, or will you lose yourselves in the labyrinth of our forests? The pair were undeterred. The full tale of Alex Tocqueville is another of our podcasts. Search for A Fortnight in the Wilderness from wherever you're at and enjoy another great story from the end of the road in Michigan. The sources for the Saginaw Trail story are from the Clarkson News, published on April 2, 1943, and from Central Michigan University's digital collections. These are only two of the stories that can be found about Michigan's Native American trails. Please visit our website for more stories and references about Native American culture in Michigan. This concludes this week's episode. Thank you for taking the time to listen to Thumb Wind's End of the Road podcast. If you like this kind of story, you are invited to join other monthly visitors on our website at thumbwind.com. Please watch for and download next week's story published each Saturday morning. Please take a moment to subscribe to our podcast and give us a review. From the end of the road in Michigan. Have a great day.